CCFR.
Fentanyl numbers have been going down, but I don't think that's the plan. The plan is to move operations, and I've been reporting on this extensively. It's all happening in Canada now. And it's so obvious. It started during Trump's first administration when he first started cracking down on the southern border. Cartels knew they could go into Canada and they didn't need a visa like they needed to get into the US. It was just a regular tourist visa. They didn't need to apply for anything or pay for anything. They could just go get their tourist, have a regular tourist visa the way I come to the United States, set up shop, negotiate and network with pre-existing organized crime groups in Canada, whether that be the 𝐥𝐿𝐧𝐝, a big one, or Brothers Keepers or Red Scorpion or the United Nations gang, and say, hey, look, you guys have incredible access, okay, over 5,000 miles of practically unprotected border into the United States. We can produce this product here and traffic it. Not to mention, a lot of these pre-existing gangs have large Asian populations. And what do we have in Vancouver? The Port of Vancouver. And where are the fentanyl precursors coming in? From China. So you move these precursors, the movement is no longer coming into Mexico. It's coming into Canada.
Are you saying in addition to Mexico produce fentanyl, or it's all moved to Canada?
I think the majority has moved to Canada.
The majority of it's moved to Canada.
Yes. I had an individual reach out to me who was an operative for the Sinaloa cartel working in Canada, running these labs. Mm-hmm. And he showed me the labs that the Sinaloa cartel is operating with.
Physically?
Yeah.
Where are they putting them?
So they're particularly in the West Coast, in BC and in Alberta, which is like a prairie province. And so there's a lot of farmland and it's residential. And prior to this, it was meth labs that they had running out there. And there would always be like a random meth lab explosion in Abbotsford or, this is like a smaller city. And then these turned into fentanyl labs that were completely under the radar because we also didn't have Canadian law enforcement like patrolling these areas to an extent that they would patrol like a large city like Vancouver or Toronto. So you're bringing in precursors from the Port of Vancouver easily because less than 1% of cargo that comes into the Port of Vancouver is actually inspected by authorities or...
Less than how much?
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%?
That is an official number, yes. So the majority of the cargo that's coming into the Port of Vancouver is unmonitored. These precursors are being brought to labs throughout the lower mainland, and they are producing fentanyl there. And it started off as distributing this product throughout Canada because just like the United States, there has been this insatiable appetite for fentanyl in Canada. Mm-hmm. During the pandemic, more people at one point were dying of fentanyl overdose deaths than from COVID. So that was a major health crisis. Mm-hmm. And then there's this major crackdown at the southern border. You already have cartel operatives established in the north. You have over 5,000 miles of practically unprotected border. It's Greenland and you can fly across, you can drive your boat across, you can drive your dirt bike across. And that just left it as open field for these members of organized crime to start to bring their operations to the next level by trafficking everything into the United States. Canadian law enforcement knows this is happening. Very aware. I would say for the past 10 years exactly is when cartel operatives from Mexico started to move operations into Canada. Law enforcement knows this is happening, but Canadian law enforcement does not have the resources to crack down on this. Even though they know that this is going on, the resources just are not there. And I have a really good source who is with the RCMP, that's Canada's National Police Force, and he specializes in organized crime. And we talk about that 1% of fentanyl number very frequently because he says neither my colleagues nor myself believe that number because we have seen so many operations go under the radar, especially when they're working undercover. And I said, well, why isn't there a crackdown then? Why aren't they stopping it? And why is the Canadian government only implementing a fentanyl czar when Trump is telling them to crack down, not when thousands of people are dying on a monthly basis from fentanyl use? And he explicitly tells me it's because they just don't have the means to do it. They haven't even been able to crack down on local gangland. How are they now supposed to focus on transnational crime organizations? The head of RCMP was asked just recently, how many organized crime groups, individual organized crime groups, do you think are operating in Canada right now? And he responds, it's on video. I don't have a number off the top of my head. I think 4,000. And so the question is clarified. There are 4,000 organized crime groups operating in Canada with their own individual leadership and networks, and the head of the RCMP said, yes, I would say so, around 4,000. This goes to show the disconnect between Canadian law enforcement in Canada, because it's actually 668 individual organized crime groups. That's according to CSIS, Canadian version of CIA. So imagine if you have this disconnect where our national police force is just pulling out a random number. How are you even supposed to crack down on these people? They don't keep track of which criminal organizations are operating which labs. So, for example, someone will be arrested. Three men will be arrested for trafficking arms and drugs. They were arrested in a Surrey home in British Columbia, and we found X amount of drugs, X amount of arms with this amount of street value. They won't say, oh, they were operating on behalf of the Sinaloa cartel. They will say, we found messages in our investigation that they were operating with Mexican associates. And some people will then subsequently be charged, and they'll be Mexican nationals living in Canada. Those guys are working for the cartels. But Canadian authority doesn't keep track, or at least not publicly, of who is working with exactly which criminal organization. And I think that also does play a role in allowing the cartels to flourish over there, because they can operate so entirely under the radar. I mean, here in the US, for the first time a few weeks ago, a woman in El Paso was arrested for particularly working as a straw buyer for 𝐥𝐿𝐷. And this was the first case of someone in the US with material to be charged as an FTO. In Canada, that wouldn't be the case. You wouldn't hear that, oh, she was directly working as an associate with the new generation cartel. But when you bring light to that, especially in a border place like El Paso, then everyone who's doing it is kind of on edge. And then they say, okay, look, hey, we're under a spotlight. But if that's not happening, you continue to operate like there's no spotlight on us. We don't need to worry, because there isn't.
Do Canadians know this is happening?
Well, if they read my reporting, they know now. I mean, Kash Patel, director of the FBI, is now saying it publicly. He just said that they're coming in through the port of Vancouver. They're producing fentanyl. The fentanyl is coming from Canada because they haven't secured the northern border. And when I initially started reporting on this, and I was reaching out to RCMP and reaching out to CSIS and putting out my contact, everyone was telling me, no, you're wrong. This can't be. And RCMP was telling me, we have no evidence to show that local criminal organizations are working directly with cartels. But I met with cartel associates in Canada showing me the production, telling me how they're doing it. And it goes back to what you asked me. Why are they telling me this? Because they want to show you exactly how they're operating under the radar. They're so tough. And oh yeah, you secured our southern border? Fuck you. We moved to Canada.
And then how fast do you think this is spreading? I mean, it sounds like right now it's pretty localized in Vancouver. When's it going to go, more towards the other coast?
It is in the East Coast. It's not at the same level, but it certainly is in the East Coast. What I know what's happening for sure in the East Coast is a lot of people are being contracted by the cartels and not Mexican people. Canadian nationals are being contracted by the cartels to operate as enforcers. A lot of people in Quebec and Ontario.
What do you mean enforcer? What does that mean? It's like a hockey player.
It's like a...
It protects the hockey team, right?
They're protecting the operations.
How so? What are they doing?
Taking out hits, threatening people, ensuring that the right individuals are being paid off, whether that be enforcement at the border so that guns can get across into Canada from the US, or fentanyl can go the other way.
How are they getting their people up there? Are they coming up through the US?
Yeah.
And just keep going north, or are they flying them in?
So prior to Canada re-implementing the visa requirement, a lot of the Mexican nationals were flying directly into Canada. They completely would bypass the US. It was much easier that way because they wouldn't need a visa. Now it's a little bit different. Now some of the operatives who were already based in the US are moving into Canada.
Okay.
I gained access to a group chat where they were basically recruiting people to work as enforcers for them, managing certain logistics of the business, whether that's paying off authority, finding out who's who, getting the arms, finding the dealers, contracting straw buyers, whatever it may be. When I was in this group chat, the first thing that stood out to me was 2 of the phone numbers were Canadian area codes. One was Alberta and one was Toronto. And one of the individuals was directly asked if he could take out a hit if need be. He would be paid $55,000 Canadian. He would have to buy a Glock with three mags, I think it was. I have this screenshot. And there could be no kids around. And if he goes to the house, make sure that no family is around of the individual that needs to be killed.
I saw that they are also recruiting from the Balkans.
Yeah.
Did I see that?
Yeah. Balkan states, like Armenian guys too, a lot of ex-gang members from over there, and in Australia too. I mean, at this
They're
point,
recruiting from Australia?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Australia, England, like, it seems like there's like this thing with the Commonwealth places is like,
Why are they going to the, I mean, it sounds like there's no shortage of people that want to join the cartels.
there
in Mexico.
isn't. And that's
And
what,
so why are they recruiting out of the Balkans?
because they need an international stronghold. And so when you have people who don't look like you, don't talk like you, and come from different training backgrounds, they can fly under the radar a lot better. And they have access to different areas that certain Mexican operatives do not. It's certainly not cost effective, but I think logistically it works for them. You have a Canadian who's willing to commit these crimes for you on their soil. You completely avoid detection of
Yeah, I
that
guess it
being
would
the
keep
cartel.
their footprint down
It does.
until those people get interrogated. And I mean,
And they say they've been working
does
for the
make
cartels.
sense.
And then in the RCMP information, they're saying, well, yeah, this person had connections with Mexican criminals. But Canadian authorities isn't going after those criminals who put out the hit.
man, is there anything that Canada has been doing to combat this at all, or they're just trying to sweep it under the rug?
I think they're sweeping it under the rug. I think since Trump tried to say, you know, we got to crack down on the northern border, and 𝐥𝐿 Patel has been putting a lot of pressure, they've been doing these sort of public things like, you know, the appointing a fentanyl czar, amping up the amount of border patrol at the northern border. But in terms of really getting to the root of the problem, it's being swept under the rug.